Drive Hard, Super Troopers 2, Operation Red Sea, Delirium, Radius, Pretty in Pink, and Sicario, Day of Soldado. All coming up next on the Movie Burner Blog Rundown. And joining us as always is John, and first up John, we're going to talk about a film Darren reviewed from 2014 called Drive Hard. This film was directed by Brian Trenchard Smith and was written by Chad Law and Evan Law. I take it they must be related in some fashion, and stars John Cusack, Thomas Jane and Zoe Vittora.
Yes, this is a DVD film, Stephen, as Darren does say in his review. It didn't get a widespread release. He says he had a bit of bother actually finding this film and watching it. I think it speaks volume for Darren's love of probably John Cusack and Thomas Jane that he has went to the lengths he's went to find this film, because when they did finally watch it, just judging on the review purely, it's pretty clear that he didn't get any enjoyment out of it, because he totally slaughtered it. And when you go into IMDb and various other review sites, it's a prevailing theme really, that it is quite a horrible experience. It's about a former race car driver who's abducted by a mysterious thief and forced to be the wheelman for a crime, puts them both in the sights of the cops and the mob. Sounds like a precarious predicament to be in, Stephen. Not only have you got the cops chasing you, but you've got mobsters who will decapitate you at the first sight, chasing you as well. I do know John Cusack, I do know Thomas Jane, I do not know Zoe Ventura, Christopher Morris or any of the other people who are in this film, but by all accounts, these are not the people you are watching this film to see. You're watching it to see John Cusack and Thomas Jane, and by all accounts, John Cusack is having a bit of a mare in it. He's phoning it in, and this is what he's kind of devolved into. He's living off his name, according to Darren and a few others.
Yeah, what I picked up from this, John, from this review by Darren, was there was a lot of improvisation, in particular from John Cusack. He seems to be doing this a lot lately. I don't know if he just got away with it in the past in films like Con Air and Room 1408, etc. But Darren's picked up on this in this film. I seem to recall I watched a film called We Are Not Animals, which I reviewed last year, starring John Cusack, and in that particular film, I think it was Al Pacino actually phoned in his scenes, but again it was all this improvisation, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, from Darren's review, it certainly doesn't. He also says that Cusack's having a bit of a he seems to be stuck in this DVD rut at the moment, just paying the bills with these type of films, but I suppose a lot of actors go through this in their career, but the last film I saw him in was actually the one where he played the older version of Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys.
Oh, yeah.
This film was called Love and Mercy, and it was a terrific film. John Cusack was excellent in it, so he does seem to be a hot and cold type of actor. I've probably seen more good films that he's been in rather than bad films, to be fair. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I do know Thomas Jane. He's one of my favourite actors. He's been in so many good films, the likes of Deep Blue Sea and Boogie Nights. In 1922, this was a Netflix film from I think it was the tail end of last year, where he played Wilfred James. I did a review on this as well. I thought he was phenomenal in that. He's an absolute cracking actor. He should be in a lot more sort of blockbuster films, I think. I don't think that's going too far. I think he's got the capabilities. He certainly proved it in the past. It's good to see that he is going to be appearing in this new Predator film as well.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those films, I think, as Darren said, it's one of those ones that it's hard to come by. That kind of gives you the impression that it's not very widespread on its release, and it's sadly it's getting a bad rating on IMDb as well, 4.3 out of 10, and that's just under 4,000 reviews, so that says a lot about it. But it's not a film I'm going to really go out my road to see.
No, much like me, Stephen. Just touching on John Cusack, the two leading actors, John Cusack and Thomas Jane. I think the last time I seen John Cusack was probably 1408. In that film, I think he starred alongside Samuel L. Jackson. He played the hotel manager. It was a great film. He obviously pretty much a solo performance from him, because once he got locked in the room, he was just on his own for the rest of the film, and utter hell trying to get out of it, and he couldn't get out of it, of course, in the end. Sorry if you've not seen that film, incidentally. Touching on Thomas Jane, this guy's, as you say, is just a fantastic actor. He was in Face Off, The Thin Red Line. That was one of my favourite war films. Deep Blue Sea was a film I actually did enjoy. He was in that. I don't think I'm going to go and watch this film, Stephen, purely because it is getting slaughtered by Darren. He does say that if you are a fan of John Cusack and Thomas Jane, that It's not the worst one to watch though, so I don't know what to make of that. I'm a fan of the two of them, so listen, if it comes on the TV at some point, then I may watch it and get some enjoyment out of it, but I'm not going to go and seek it out like Darren has. I do see that it had a $12 million budget, which has probably been quite a hit for the studio. I don't know who was responsible for creating this film, but if it's went straight to DVD or it's a DVD release in the main, then that's probably a big loss. But yeah, I mean, not get much more to add to it. I haven't seen it. Concept seems intriguing enough where you've got these two people stuck in a car running away from the police and the mob. That's a eerie predicament to be in. I don't know where the hell you'd turn in that situation, but yeah, we'll move on.
Yeah, moving on, John, to a review from DM Anderson. This is a film that came out this year, Super Troopers 2. This is a follow-up to the original, which came out, I think, 17 or 18 years ago. And this is directed by Che Chandrasekhar, who also wrote this along with Kevin Heffernan and also stars in it with Kevin Heffernan as well and Steve Lemmy. This is basically, the plot to this is when a border dispute arises between the US and Canada, the Super Troopers are tasked with establishing a highway patrol station in the disputed area. This is a comedy crime mystery, John.
I haven't seen it, Stephen. Funnily enough, I haven't seen the first Super Troopers either. I didn't know there was an original Super Troopers, but you can always rely on Dave to pull these films out and review them. And his reviews in general are pretty interesting, pretty funny, pretty good. And I remember he did it with a film maybe a month back or so that I hadn't seen, and this is much the same. As he says, bit of border dispute between the US and Canada. It sounds intriguing, but then again, not intriguing enough for me to go and watch it. I see Sean William Scott is in there. Of course, he is a chap who was famous for American Pie back in the day and several other films. He's always good for popping up in these comedic roles. He's not the most gifted actor by any means, but he has popped up in a number of comedic roles in comedy films to good effect. There's a couple other people in there that I'm not going to mention because I don't know them.
Well, Damon Wayans Jr. in
Rob
there,
Lowe as well.
Rob Lowe, as you said. Linda Carter, who was the original one, well, she wasn't the original Wonder Woman, but she played Wonder Woman on the television series, John, and our very own Brian Cox is in there as well. But as you said, it's one of those films, you know, if you're not familiar with the 2001 release, I think you'd probably, I don't think it's vital you have to go back and watch that one to really get what's happening in this one, but I suppose to get some, you know, character familiarity, it probably would be a good idea to go back and watch the original movie. You know, as far as I can see, it's getting sort of average ratings on IMDb at 6.3 out of 10. This is after 10,000 reviews, so it's not doing too bad. It's not exactly a comedy classic, but at the same time, it's not a total flop either.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that Dave actually mentions towards the end of his review that out with gratuitous cameos and a slightly bigger cast, this could almost be considered a remake, which fans would have been happy with because apparently it was out of their wallets that this was created. So I don't know whether this was a Kickstarter sort of a scenario where the fans have pushed for a sequel and they've obviously donated to make it possible and make it happen. Not too sure, Stephen. Looking at some of the reviews in other places, it does seem like it has been a hit with fans of the original film. It's some of the same gags presented in a slightly different way, and one actually says that him and his friends will probably be quoting this for another 17 years. So it's certainly had its audience. This film seems to have connected with them, went over well with them. And in terms of the box office performance, it had a budget of 13.5 million. So if it was funded by fans, and that's quite impressive that they've put that much of a hard-earned cash up. It's clearly been a cult classic, the original, and they were really inspired to see a second edition, second version of it. But its total gross was 30.6 million as of the 12th of July. So listen, it's certainly made back a profit. It's rewarded the people who created it. It's rewarded the determination of the fans. And I've not went to see it, but I've not seen it because I didn't know it existed, I can't lie. But having read the review, I'd probably go back and watch the original film, try and get a feel of whether I was going to enjoy it, and then I'll take it from there whether I go on to watch Super Troopers 2.
Yeah, John, I think I would probably do the same as well because it doesn't sound that bad. To be fair, you're kind of dabbling with danger when you're, the fans are funding the film because then there could be a lot of demands on, how the how the plot goes and who they want to appear in it. Just going back to Dave's review, with these sort of interspersed cameos, I kind of got that impression when I did see the list of actors appearing as the likes of Rob Lowe, etc. I'm talking totally blindly here. I don't actually know how big a part he's got in this, but it kind of suggested that to me when I started looking down the cast list, that there could perhaps be a lot of cameos in this film. But somewhere down the line, it's just on for just over an hour and a half, and I think I'll give it a bash.
Yeah, there's certainly some interesting photos I'm looking through here, Stephen, that probably suggest there is some funny moments. Stephen's quite a particular taste, this film. Whether I'd enjoy it, I don't know. Only time will tell when I go to watch the original. But we're going to move on to the third film in this week's Movie Burner Blog Rundown, and it is Operation Red Sea. Again, reviewed by Dave Anderson, and it's directed by Dante Lam, who apparently stars as Lin Chaojin in the film, and it's written by Jai Feng. It also stars Yi Zhang, Johnny Huang, and Hai King. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names right because I'm not Chinese, I don't speak Mandarin, so if I'm butchering those names, then apologies in advance. I believe it's some sort of a war film. It's a Chinese foreign language war film, and it seems very, very interesting to me, Stephen. As I've admitted many a time, I've even said it in my profile on the website, that war is one of my favourite genres. I'm not familiar with this film, I'm not familiar with the setting, I don't know whether it's based on a real life event or not, but I'd probably give it a bash because it does look very interesting. I don't know many of the faces. I know you're going to come in, you do know quite a few, or some of them anyway, and I'd probably give this a watch.
Yes, film is the original title was called Hong Hai Ying Dong, and it came out in February, John. I'm pretty sure this is on Netflix here in the UK. I'm surprised that I've totally missed this one because I do like my Chinese films. Yeah. This film is it's basically a hostage rescue operation, and as you said, John, some of the cast, familiar with Chinese cinema. I don't really want to get into every actor. It's down in this credited cast here and what they've been doing, but I'm familiar with a lot of these actors. One thing I will say about Chinese cinema is the cinematography is always absolutely stunning. It's something I think they really do take pride in with their movies, no matter what the genre is. I did go through a bit of a binge watch back in the early 2000s with Chinese films, and it was one of the things I did pick up on was the cinematography. Absolutely stunning. They do invest a lot of thought into how their films look and feel, and we were just talking before we came on as well, John, after reading this review, and it's one of those ones that I do want to see because, like you, I do like my war films, and because it is Chinese film as well, I'm going to be taking a look at this probably over the next few days.
Yeah, just reading through the review again there, Stephen, as you were talking in it. There's a couple of things really intrigue me. As you says, I don't know if it's in the review, but certainly they love slick cinematography and do the Chinese. They've got a very particular style, which is why often when Western films, many a blockbuster goes over to China, it kind of a thought because they have got their own unique taste and they know what they want. And certainly one of the things they want is slick and beautifully made films. We've seen it before with the likes of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and The House of Flying Daggers, and also the Ip Man trilogy, all fast-paced, incredibly shot, beautiful films. But the other thing I loved was that he says that the on-screen human attrition is staggering, making the handiwork of John Rambo look like it was a peacekeeping mission. That's another thing that I'm very intrigued by. I love my war films, but moreover I love right violent and realistic gory war films. I also find it interesting that he likens it to Black Hawk Down. It's a similar type of a film, and that the characters aren't really fleshed out. It isn't a character-driven film, it's more about the mission and evacuating this government personnel from the country during a terrorist takeover. So it's an intriguing concept. You know it's going to be beautifully shot, it's gory, it's a war setting, and as Dave does say, it's fiery mayhem and a violent spectacle, so I'm right into that. If I can get my hands on this, be it on Netflix or anywhere else, then I will be giving this film a watch, believe me. It's got an 86% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is absolutely fantastic. And Dave does say in his review that it's the 7th biggest film in the all-time grossing list. So listen, you can't argue with that. It's a successful film, and I will give it a watch.
Just moving on now, John, to another review from Darren. This one is Delirium from this year again. This is a horror thriller, and this is directed by Dennis Iliadis and was written by Adam Alicia and stars Topher Grace, Genesis Rodriguez and Patricia Clarkson and a whole host of other actors. This is actually getting a rating of 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and the premise of this film, John, is a man is released from a mental institute and he inherits a mansion after his wealthy parents die. After a series of disturbing events, he comes to believe it is haunted. This is certainly down Darren Street. He's a big horror fan, and I'll just let you in, John, with your thoughts at the moment. This one, stars Topher Grace. I've not heard from this chap for a little while now. First introduced to him when he appeared on that 70s show. I thought he would have went on to bigger and better things when he was cast as Venom and Spider-Man 3, but we all know how that panned out, sadly. I think he's a good actor. I don't know what his performance was in this film, to be honest. I've not seen it. As I said, it's only came out here, it's only came out in the USA on the 22nd of May. I don't know if we have a UK release here, but it's certainly not a film I'm familiar with.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's a classic horror film, Stephen. A siege horror film, I'd presume. He moves into this big mansion, starts experiencing odd events. That's kind of along a similar lines of a film I went to see last week, Marrowbone, which was just released in the United Kingdom. Similar concept, they're in a big house, strange goings on start to pop up. He says it's a classic B-horror movie. It uses much of the horror tropes that have been recycled from bigger and better films. He does say that its biggest sin is that it's a little bit boring, but the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio is a producer on it immediately grabs my attention. It must have something about it. It must have a decent amount of quality.
I think so as well, John. I mean, it does come across as more a psychological thriller and a mystery rather than a horror, just on that description. Yeah,
and the fact that it's popped up now on Netflix, Stephen, obviously Netflix have got I'd say a 50-50 hit ratio. It's half the films are utter garbage and half of them are fantastic. This is on Netflix, so it's a 50-50 chance with the way it's going to go. I don't know, I've not seen it. But if it comes over to the UK Netflix, no doubt it'll be about 2 years from now, because we get the dregs in Netflix. But listen, I like Topher Grace. He's a good actor. He was in Traffic as well, which was a brilliant film. Darren says he's kind of a dislike by a large number of people, certainly not me. He says the acting's fine, but that Clarkson and Rodriguez are wasted in the main, so I don't know what to make of that. And again, it plays into Marrowbone that I watched last week, where this is a kind of film where you've got the main protagonist and everything's seen from his perspective. You don't know what the hell's going on, whether it's real, whether it's a fantasy within his mind. That was all the same in the Marrowbone film. The main character gets revealed as a bit of a loony. He was imagining that his siblings were with him at a traumatic event prior to meeting him in the film. It seems it's the same with Topher Grace's main character in this film. They make a big deal of him taking his medicine, so it's hinting at him having a mental illness, and that maybe it's all in his head. But he does end by saying that it's not really a worthwhile watch. It's not a horrible film, but it's a film you'll forget in a couple of days, and in a few months you won't even recall if you've seen it. I've seen many a film like that, although I do tend to find that the real shit films that I watch stick in my mind because I love ripping them apart in reviews. Most notably, the often quoted Arizona Forgotten that I bring up every couple of weeks or months, because that was horrific. But listen, we'll see whether I watch it at some point. If it comes on Netflix and I've got a couple of hours to kill, I may watch it.
Yeah, my sentiment is exact, John. I think it's one of those films that I wouldn't go right out my way to watch, but as I said, if I came across it on Netflix, I probably would give it a watch. Just on basically on Darren's review there. I think it's a very fair and honest review. And just moving on, John, to our next movie. This is called Radius. It was made in 2017. I don't think it actually came out here till this year. It's been reviewed by Stephen Wilkins, one of our movie writers, and this is directed by Caroline Labriche, Steve Leonard, and it's also written by Caroline Labriche and stars Diego Klatenhoff, Charlotte Sullivan and Robert Borge. And basically the premise of this film is a man wakes with amnesia and finds people mysteriously dead.
That's a very interesting concept of a film, Stephen, but when you do look at the reviews, it's a bit meh. It's only an hour and a half long though, so that's something that's got going for it, if nothing else. Another intriguing concept is that the writer's Caroline Labriche, she is listed twice, so I don't know whether she's got a doppelganger or whether it's a twin that shares the exact same name, or whether the writing is so utterly incredible that Caroline just has to be named twice. I do recall there was a football player from about a decade ago that had a double name, and everyone used to bring that up as a joke. It gets stale after about 2 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I've not got much to say about this, Stephen. I haven't seen it. I don't think it's even out over here yet. Its main release has been in the Netherlands, so unless I fly over to Amsterdam, maybe fire into some hash cakes while I'm watching this film, that may maybe a way to get some more enjoyment out of it. I don't know. But listen, it says Liam wakes from a car crash. This is the main storyline. He wakes from a car crash. Liam, incidentally, is played by Diego Klattenhoff. What a name. He wakes from a car crash and he makes his way into town to look for help. And there's dead bodies with strange pale eyes. And there's obviously a virus in the air, and that's the mystery behind the whole thing. It's an intriguing concept. Certainly Steve seems to have enjoyed it, because he gave it an A-, which is that's pretty decent. That's close to being very, very good. He says the movie from start to finish is a complete guessing game. It's filled with twists and heavily dependent on jogged flashbacks. It's got a surprising twist at the end too, so yeah.
I think any thriller, John, should, any good thriller anyway, should be a complete guessing game anyway, for the audience. But, it's interesting to read as well that, the film actually started off quite brightly, very interesting, but as it, went on, it did have a bit of a disappointing ending. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. Yeah,
and that just wraps up talk of that film, Stephen. It was short and concise and straight to the point. We're going to move on to Pretty in Pink from all the way back in 1986. This was one that you reviewed, and it was, of course, directed by Howard Deutsch and written by the great John Hughes. Stars Molly Ringwald, John Cryer, Harry Dean Stanton, Andrew McCarthy, James Spader and Annie Potts. Is a very good cast. And I'll let you in to discuss what it's all about, Stephen, because frankly I've seen a hell of a lot of John Hughes films. We were just talking about the great John Hughes earlier on today, and he was a prominent figure all the way throughout my childhood. Some of my favourite films and most memorable films growing up, this man was responsible for in one way or the other. But I haven't seen this one, sadly.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about John Hughes is he invented the Brat Pack, John. Yeah. Pure and simple. The core base of that group of actors from that time. As you said, although this was directed by Howard Deutsch, I think that's how you pronounce it anyway, the writings of John Hughes, his trademarks are all over this movie. I actually didn't see this movie till probably the early 90s. I was only 10 when this came out, and I don't think I would have appreciated it 10 years old. It has an underlining question about the 1980s and what people were all about, and the sort of persona of to be successful, to be rich is some of the most important things in life. This film touches on that. It's as I said, the cast of the likes of Molly Ringwald, John Cryer, Andrew McCarthy at this stage were pretty new to me. The likes of Molly Ringwald, who I think was only 18 at the time of this, shows great maturity in her character as Andy. Andrew McCarthy is his usual suave self. A very handsome chap for this period. I don't know what he's doing lately. I think he's doing producing now, but likes of James Spader in there as well. John Cryer, who would go on to do Alan Harper in 2.5 Men. And the likes of Harry Dean Stanton in there as well. Terrific actor. Sadly missed. He passed away just over a year ago, John. Yeah. But the film, it does have that social conscience to it about Andy, the sort of girl from the wrong side of the tracks, mingling with the sort of richer kids. Andrew McCarthy's Blaine is one of those kids, but he's a more level-headed, open-minded chap, a very likeable chap as well. I think the only one that doesn't like him is Ducky, played by John Cryer, who's slightly jealous of him because he's got a crush on Andy, and Andy's got a crush on Blaine. It's one of these scenarios. James Spader plays the character Steph in this, who's Blaine's friend, or so-called friend, but he does warn his friend that it's okay to muck around with this girl, but don't get any ideas of having any serious relationships with basically this tramp. That's the kind of message that's in there. But it's a great film. One of the reasons I went actually back to this movie is because of its soundtrack. It's a terrific soundtrack. I mentioned this in my review as well. I'm a big Echo and the Bunnyman fan, and it's got one of my favourite songs from them in there as well, even though it is briefly in the record shop. that Andy works in, bringing in the dancing horses. It's a terrific track. It's a great film, John. As I said in my review, if you're not really familiar with John Hughes' work, I would not suggest starting with this film. I would watch them in chronological order, because I think you will see his talents develop with every movie. I mean, this is the guy that wrote National Lampoon's Vacation, so you know what you're getting right away. It's not as goofy as that film, but it's not as dark as The Breakfast Club either.
Yeah, I just look at the soundtrack, Stephen. I've had a look after what he says. It's got the likes of the Smith, the Echo and the Bunnymen, New Order, INXS, and even Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. So that's quite prominent group of artists in there, so I could imagine it would have been highly memorable. One of the things I've always took away from John Hughes' movies is that he does kind of explore the darker side to the 80s, also the superficial nature of that decade, more than any other decade I would have thought, probably outside the 60s. It was very superficial. People were all about glitz, glam, money.
Cars.
Yeah, cars as well. And he really does dive into that in a number of his films. Certainly he did it in The Great Outdoors, also with the speedboat scene and stuff like that, and just the Dan Aykroyd's big in-your-face chap who was all about flash, and John Candy was a more down-to-earth and introverted chap. And you obviously seen it in Uncle Buck as well, which I believe he was involved in. It was the promiscuous nature of his young niece or something like that who was always going out, and he was really trying to toe the line with her. And I love that about his films, and Planes, Trains and Automobiles as well. I could go through the list. He looks into the darker side of that decade, and he really does explore the characters within his screenplays very, very well indeed. I've not seen this film, but I looked at your review, Stephen. It was a very, very good review. Gave me a good idea of what was going on, and it's an interesting film, and I just know what you're going to get with this guy. I've seen a number of his films, and he's a fantastic writer. I will give this a watch, I definitely will. Just the combination of the screenplay, the soundtrack, the interesting characters, and the kind of a little love triangle, and the her mixing with upper class people, and also the down and outs that were in her life mixing in, and that conflict. I'll give this a watch, I definitely will. It was a very, very interesting read. Yeah,
just moving on to our final review this week, John. This was one that you wrote. We've talked about this in some depth on the box office chat. It only came out a couple of weeks ago. You better see this, I think in its first week anyway, John. Sicario, Day of the Soldado. This is getting a good review, actually, on getting a good rating, I should say, on IMDb, 7.3 out of 10. Despite, its mixed reviews, it's getting good feedback. This is directed by Stefano Salmia and was written by Taylor Sheridan. I know you're a fan of Taylor Sheridan's work, John. And stars Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin and Isabella Moner.
Yeah, it's getting a high rating on IMDb, but certainly when you look at Rotten Tomatoes, which is a more critic heavy skew, it's only getting around the low 60% margin, so it's not I mean, I wouldn't say it's terrible. It isn't a terrible film, Stephen. I never do say that in my review at any point. It's a average to above average film, certainly in comparison to the first Sicario film, which I thought was a fantastic film, utterly outstanding from start to finish, from a storytelling point of view, from a character driven point of view, from the artistry, the cinematography, because you've got the genius that is Roger Deakins in there, the artistry and the genius of Denis Villeneuve directing it, and also Johan Johansson as well, who's been involved in the likes of Arrival with Denis Villeneuve, done the score. These are all elements that were sadly missing from this film, and when you compare it to the first film, it makes it more apparent, really. I say in my review, there is no need to continually make sequels of great standalone self-contained films. You just don't need to do it. Something I hate about today's film industry, certainly in Hollywood, but it's this continual, incessant need to fire out sequels. There's no need for it. I say it's a sequel though, but I do go on to say in my review, and it is the case that this isn't really a proper sequel. It's more like the Dark Knight film within the Sicario trilogy, in the sense that it technically is a sequel, but it doesn't really share anything with the first film. It's got two of the same characters that come through, but out of that it's like a new story in the same world, which was like the Dark Knight. It had no connection really. It was a standalone film in that Dark Knight trilogy. And I mean, in terms of the film itself, it's about a drug war, as ever, in the US-Mexico border. It's escalated with the cartels trafficking terrorists over the border. This leads the CIA and the DOD to bring Matt Graver in, who's obviously a no-nonsense chap. He and the mercurial Alejandro Gillick team up to really start a civil war between the cartels. They go over, they assassinate one of the cartel's lawyers, and then they kidnap one of the other rival cartel's daughters, and they just play them off and stuff like that. But it becomes a little bit muddied. I says this in umpteen of the 2 of the box office chats now, Stephen. It just becomes muddied round about the middle. It's a little bit convoluted, and I lost track of it. I mean, the concept's simple enough. They stole his daughter away. They were going to drop her back off in a rival cartel's territory to cause friction and infighting. Alejandro becomes connected to her. It becomes apparent that it isn't terrorists that were to blame for the attacks in the American soil that you see earlier on in the film. And as a result, they are then the CIA and the president then give the order for Graver to assassinate or kill the daughter. This causes friction between Graver and Gillett. Gillett turns role, tries to protect her. He develops a bond with her. And yeah, I mean, that's really the concept. It drops off towards the end, though. They leave the ending open for another sequel. The other thing I will say is that it lacked the humanising figure of Emily Blunt's character from the first film. You didn't have that perspective from the audience coming in. But then again, I say in my review that Stefano Sollima and Taylor Sheridan did this deliberately. They wanted a film with no morals, but sadly it didn't work for me because it's not just the morals, it became muddied, and it's a very average affair for a Taylor Sheridan film. A man I'm a big admirer of. He was involved in The Wind River, a couple of other fantastic films, but this just isn't up to the usual standard of a man. Not a terrible film, not a great film.
I think a lot of people might be holding their reservations for this third film, if there is going to be a third film, John, and maybe go back and judge this one.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying about The Last Jedi as well. It remains to be seen, but you know, when you see the likes of Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin returning as returning characters, that's what surprised me about the sort of reaction that this movie's got, because normally that reaction is held for sequels that the studio have pushed for, where the director of the first film is nowhere to be seen, the writers of the first film are nowhere to be seen, and the stars of that original film are nowhere to be seen, and it's a total new cast. But in this case, as you said, you know, it is kind of disconnected from that first film. Comparisons to The Dark Knight, I can understand what you're saying, John, but one of the things that I will say is The Dark Knight was well received. Yeah. This film isn't, surprisingly, and as you said, if they were deliberately taking the humanisation away, it's not worked for them, unfortunately. But as I said, the third film, if there's going to be a third film, might save this, you know, in time.
Yeah, the final thing I will add to this, Stephen, is that it's not through a lack of pure acting from Benicio del Toro or Josh Brolin. Those two are absolutely incredible again. The Alejandro character's a brilliant character. He went through a lot of trauma with his family being killed in the first film. He does develop a bond between the Isabella character and Alejandro. He does do all right at the humanising role, but just not to the same effect as Emily Blunt did in the first film. He was thrust into that role. He did his best. He's a fantastic actor, but it just didn't hit for me. Josh Brolin, love the guy, brilliant actor, love the Matt Graver character. He's brutal. There's some amazing choreography in there as well, I have to say. That's one element that did come over from the first film. The slickness of some of the SWAT manoeuvres, him coming out a helicopter, shooting with one bullet and it getting through 2 of the smuggler guys' heads in the Jeep, and just the calculated way of the character, I love it. But it's not a terrible film by any means, but it just didn't hit the same heights of the first film, and it's always going to be compared to the first film. That's what happens. The studio have obviously took a gamble trying to flesh this out into a franchise. For me, it's not worked, but who knows? When we get into the third film with a potential trilogy, if indeed it is a trilogy, we may even see Denis Villeneuve coming back, and Emily Blunt's character maybe coming back. We'll have a new take on the story, and it might be more humanising. Who knows? But that just brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Movie Burner Blog Rundown, where we break down the previous reviews over the last week. We'd just like to thank you for listening to us once again, and we'll be back next week.
Remember guys, if you enjoyed that episode, then do hit that like button, comment below, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. If you want to follow us on social media for all the latest updates from Movie Burner Entertainment, then we can be found on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners. You can also listen to us on Google Play and iTunes at the Movie Burner Podcast. And last but not least, if you want to access all the latest written reviews and the occasional article, then that can be found on our website at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.